Carpio, wearing a mask making him look like the movie character Hannibal Lecter, is being arraigned for murder. In the courtroom, his family is shocked to see his disfigured face.
Step up, get it out.
In 2005, Esteban Carpio, a man accused of killing a police officer, was brought into a Rhode Island courtroom under disturbing circumstances. The courtroom erupted in shock when Carpio entered, visibly bloodied and restrained with a face guard. This incident became one of the most memorable moments of the case and a focal point of national attention. The reactions of both Carpio's family and the officer's loved ones illustrated the deep anguish and tension surrounding this tragic event. The situation began on April 17, 2005, when Esteban Carpio was questioned by Providence police officers in connection with the stabbing of an elderly woman the previous day. Detectives Jorge Oliveira and James Allen were interviewing Carpio in an office at the police station when things took a sudden and violent turn. During the interview, Carpio managed to seize Detective Allen's gun, fatally shooting him in the head. What made the incident even more tragic was that Detective Allen, a 27-year veteran of the force, had a long-standing reputation as a dedicated officer known for his fairness and integrity. His death shocked the Providence police community and the broader public. Immediately after the shooting, Carpio fled the police station by jumping out of a third-story window. The fall injured him, and he was apprehended after a brief manhunt. Police officers subdued him and took him into custody. His arrest was quick, but it became clear that his escape had further escalated the violent chain of events. When Carpio was brought to court the next day, the scene that unfolded became a lasting image for those following the case. Carpio appeared with his face bloodied, and he was wearing a mask-like restraint known as a spit guard, which covered most of his head. His appearance in this condition sparked confusion and alarm in the courtroom, particularly among his family members. The image of him in restraints and clearly injured raised immediate questions about the circumstances of his arrest and the treatment he had received from police officers. Carpio's family reacted emotionally, expressing disbelief and concern over his condition. They claimed that he had been beaten by the police during his apprehension. His mother and other relatives, visibly distressed, were heard screaming in the courtroom, accusing the police of mistreatment and brutality. They were particularly alarmed by the fact that he was bruised and bleeding, leading them to believe that excessive force had been used during his arrest. The police, however, denied these accusations, stating that Carpio's injuries were sustained during his escape, specifically from the third-story window he had jumped out of in his attempt to flee. According to law enforcement, the restraint mask was a necessary precaution due to Carpio's violent behavior following the murder of Detective Allen and his subsequent capture. They also pointed out that the spit guard was used to prevent him from spitting at officers, which was deemed necessary for the safety of those around him. This courtroom scene with Carpio bloodied and restrained underscored the gravity of the situation. On one hand, there was the devastating loss of Detective Allen, who had served his community for nearly 3 decades. On the other hand, Carpio's family raised concerns about how he had been treated, leading to a debate about the actions of law enforcement. As the trial proceeded, emotions continued to run high. The murder of a police officer is an event that sends shockwaves through law enforcement communities, and in this case, the trial brought to light the intense pressure officers face in dealing with violent suspects. Throughout the proceedings, Carpio's legal defense argued that he was suffering from mental health issues at the time of the crime. They pointed to his erratic behavior as a sign that he was not fully aware of his actions when he shot Detective Allen. However, prosecutors painted a very different picture. They emphasized the cold-blooded nature of the crime, highlighting the fact that Carpio had intentionally grabbed Detective Allen's firearm and used it against him. The prosecution also pointed out that Carpio had fled the scene, which they argued demonstrated a consciousness of guilt. They contended that his attempt to escape and his violent actions afterward were clear evidence that he knew what he had done and was trying to avoid the consequences. The defense's mental health argument did not sway the jury, and Carpio was ultimately convicted of the murder of Detective Allen. In 2006, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This verdict brought a sense of justice for the family of Detective Allen, who had endured months of grief and heartache following his tragic death. For Carpio's family, however, the outcome was devastating. While they expressed sorrow for the loss of Detective Allen, they continued to insist that Carpio had been mistreated and that his mental health issues had not been adequately considered. The courtroom footage of that initial hearing, with Carpio bloodied and restrained, became symbolic of the broader tensions between law enforcement and marginalized communities. It raised questions about how suspects are treated in custody, especially those accused of violent crimes against police officers. The case also brought attention to the challenges police officers face in high-stakes situations. The murder of Detective Allen served as a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in law enforcement, particularly when dealing with individuals who are unpredictable or violent. Many within the police community mourned the loss of a beloved colleague and honored his memory through various tributes and ceremonies. Detective Allen's legacy continued to inspire fellow officers and his community long after the trial had ended. Meanwhile, the courtroom footage of Esteban Carpio remains a powerful reminder of the emotional toll that such cases can have on both the families of victims and the families of those accused of heinous crimes. The visual of Carpio in a spit guard, combined with the anguished cries of his relatives, captures the complex and often painful nature of the criminal justice process. For the family of Detective Allen, the trial brought some measure of closure, but for Carpio's family, it left lingering questions and unresolved pain. In the years since the trial, the case of Esteban Carpio continues to be cited in discussions about police brutality, the treatment of mentally ill suspects, and the challenges faced by law enforcement in protecting themselves while upholding justice. While justice was served in the eyes of many, the emotional scars left by the tragedy remain, serving as a sobering reminder of the fragility of life and the weight of choices made in moments of extreme crisis.